There's a saying that if you do what you love, you will never work a day in your life. At Apple, I learned that is a total crock. You will work harder than you ever thought possible, but the tools will feel light in your hands.
So good.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Chef's kiss, Tim Cook.
The problem is that the bigger the mountain you're trying to climb, the bigger the W you're trying to get, typically the more delayed it is
Longer the lag.
between when you start behaving like a winner and when you start being a winner. And most people don't get the fast enough feedback loop to know that they're on the right path when they are taking these first steps in the right direction, because they have this really big goal, but they forget that with that really big goal comes the even longer delay that it takes to get there, while still continuing to act with no feedback from society.
No positive reinforcement. No
whatsoever. Nothing. And I think that's like, if I actually had to put a real, like what has worked so well for me and why the input over the output focus has been so powerful, is that I can extend the time horizon basically indefinitely, because the goal is me, and then the external goals occur.
You don't need the positive reinforcement. I mean, everybody's seen it.
No, I need the positive reinforcement, but the positive reinforcement is coming from me.
Internally.
I'm just being like, just because I think it's important.
The positive external reinforcement that most people are looking for.
Right. But if you are the goal, then the actions you take every day are reinforcing who you believe yourself to be. That's where the confidence comes from.
As long as they're directionally correct.
And if you just want to be satisfied, then just work your ass off.
Yeah.
The leading indicator of a successful person is the ability to act without anything happening. And when you continue down that path, it happens slower than you expect and then faster than you can imagine. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the part that everyone misses, is they expect the faster than they can imagine, and they imagine really big. And so then their expectations are really big, really fast, but they take the intensity and they don't apply it to a timeline that's appropriate.
This is from Mark Manson. Why I hate being around negative people. Being an asshole is a weak person's idea of strength. Complaining is their connection. Never let yourself be held back by other people's fears. People criticize what they were afraid to do themselves because bold action reminds them of their own inaction. If you're afraid to be criticized, why do you care about the opinions of those who are too timid to do it themselves? If you are the criticizer, does tearing down someone who has the courage you lack make you better?
People criticize because it helps them justify the risks they chose not to take, in the hopes that it'll dissuade you from doing it so that you can be in the exact same position as them, which then justifies that they made the right call. It's rarely the information or the intensity that makes things hard. It's the sticking with it that makes it hard. And so the desire that we have to quit is simply breaking the consistency. And so that's why consistency has always been the hardest thing for most people to achieve. But the intensity of what you have to do to be successful is much lower than most people expect. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes they suffer significantly more in a short period of time than is required to be successful over a much longer period of time with a much lower intensity. And so it's just like, if you walk for 5 minutes a day, you're going to get, 50% of the health benefits, probably more than that, I'm sure, of just even exercising. You add 10 years to your life if you walked 5 or 10 minutes a day. And the path of personal development is befriending uncertainty. And so I obviously sit from the entrepreneurial perspective, but almost all decisions that you make in the beginning, you have incomplete data and you have to make decisions anyways. And so it's growing comfortable with taking your best bad guess and being directionally correct rather than searching for a perfect answer, because a perfect answer assumes perfect information, which you can only have after you begin. And so in some ways, making a decision is the perfect answer so that you can get the information
feedback
to then improve the quality of the decision later. And I think that one loop is what a lot of people miss out on, is they obsess for years sometimes on the perfect pick, the perfect business, the perfect job, the perfect mate, when most of the times beginning each step illuminates the next step, which means the information, the feedback that you get from walking gives you more about where to walk than trying to sit at the beginning in the darkness and pick a direction.
Well, it's the difference as well, I think, between people who are super advanced, super developed, super far down the line, and people who are beginning. It's like, dude, what are you risking? by trying to do this thing. For you, it's fine for you to spend 18 months negotiating with Sam on the school deal.
Yeah.
But if you are yet to do any business, that's probably not necessarily the right way to go about things. Tim Ferriss says, in the short term, your success depends on your intensity. In the long term, your success depends on your consistency. Do not sacrifice the latter for the former.
What's wild about the fear that people have when they're starting out is that they say things like, I have nothing going for me. I have no advantages. I have nothing to my name. I have no money. I have no network. I have no resources. It also means that you have nothing to lose, which makes you incredibly dangerous. And I think people wildly underestimate how many shots on goal you can take when you have nothing to lose. Whereas when someone has something to lose, they have to be more and more selective about the shots they take. And so you have the perfect conditions for taking risk, because the worst case scenario is baseline, is where you're currently at.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that
your
means,
downside is this.
which means that it's like going to the casino and playing craps, but they say that you can just keep playing until you win. But people are afraid to roll.
Reminder for anyone internally debating weekend plans. If you don't want to go, don't go. If they care whether you go or not, they don't care about you. And if they care about you, they don't care if you go or not. Just because you have free time doesn't mean anyone who asks for it is entitled to it.
I think the second part I want to start with, which is, if you see that you have an empty calendar, most people assume that if someone asks you for that time, it's therefore theirs. And it's only not theirs when someone else has claimed it, which means that your time only belongs to other people. And then you're surprised by the fact that your investment of time has yielded nothing for you when you've given the only and most valuable asset that you have to everyone else, who often give a very poor return on it for you. And so in the beginning, if you don't have money, the only thing you have is time. And so that is the only thing it's the only currency you can spend to improve yourself or get closer to your goals. And so if that's the one currency you have, then why on earth would you give it away?
It's genuinely right to say that your calendar is a better measure of your wealth than your bank account.
It's also the easiest way to know where someone's going to be in 5 years or even a year.
How so?
You just see where they're investing their time, and you can predict like more accurately what their life is going to look like in a year based on what they're doing today. And it's a good thing, for us. It's hard for me not to put the business stuff into it, but a reminder that the life that I'm living today is a result of the work that I did 6 and 12 months ago. And so if you were to look at my calendar 6 and 12 months ago, then you might extrapolate out to what I'm doing today. But just like people want the immediate reward, they also see their current condition as a result of the behavior they're doing today, it's not at all. And so that's why I think having, in some ways, a very vivid imagination of, like, this is where I think the benefit of, quote, visualization comes into play. I don't see it as much as a benefit for like, oh, I have to imagine this thing to happen. But I think it's more powerful to think, I'm doing this thing today and I'm imagining it happening. So it's an approximation of the feedback loop that you want to have. And so it helps you substitute and get through the period where nothing's actually happening.
This is, it was so cool to learn this. Going to the gym is one of the very few pursuits that you can do where in the act of doing the thing, you get a brief window into what it will be like if you continue to do the thing. Yeah. If I go on Duolingo and try to learn Spanish, I don't briefly become much better at Spanish, like where I'm going to be at in 6 months or 12 months time. But if I go to the gym and get a pump on, I go, hey, that's me, hopefully, flat in 9 months time. Like how I look now at the end of the session is where I want to be toward the end of this year. And that reinforcement loop is so good. I genuinely think no one's spoken about this.
The pump preview.
Yeah. But like that, I think, is the feedback mechanism that makes the gym so compelling. It's one of the reasons why it makes the gym so compelling. You get this brief window into a future version of you and you go, fucking, dude, my delts look fucking awesome. I can't wait for that to be how I look when I wake up on a morning. And you go, okay, that's how I'm going to get there. And that's why it's so gratifying, right? It works in the moment and it works over the long term.
But the difference between experts and beginners is that experts have more ways to reward themselves in a given condition. And so if you think about an expert salesman, there are so many interactions they can have that they are good at, that they can find rewarding and positively reinforcing. And so the goal is to develop enough skill that your external environment and conditions can deliver enough positive feedback that it can become self-sustaining.
Give me a tangible example.
So if you're an editor and you edit videos for a living, in the beginning, you have to, you watch a video and then you try the thing. And if it doesn't work, there is a feedback loop, it's null. And then you go back, you try it again, and then you do get a positive feedback. Oh, I'd made that transition happen. I made that color grading occur, whatever. I'm talking you get the idea. There are some roles like sales and editing where there's a lot of people who are music, where people become passionate because there's enough fast feedback loops in the beginning where they can try something and then get good. A master musician can pick up any instrument and have positive feedback loops everywhere. And so the more you master any skill, the more ways you can win. The rich get richer is that because everything is so positively reinforcing, because they start to develop skills, then they do more and more of it. And as they do more of it, the rich get richer, the better get better, the better become best. And then everyone who's starting out is like, how on God's earth does this guy have this work ethic? But it's really that he has high levels of skill. And all right, I'm going to go on a tangent here, but I think it's going to be worth it. So I think about everything in terms of skills. And I have more or less divorced myself from the words like feelings, psychology, intuition, whatever. I've just taken it out of my vocabulary and character traits and tried to focus ruthlessly on what are the actions that I can take to become patient. And if you say, hey, be patient, what does someone do, right? They have to figure out what to do in the meantime. That's the definition of patience. If you say, hey, be more charismatic, the problem with that directive is that it's a bundled term. And so I say charismatic, but what it really means is 12 skills underneath of it. That means that when you walk into a room, stand up straight. When you walk into a room, look everyone in the eyes. When you walk into a room, announce yourself, speak louder, shake people's hands and look at them while they're talking. When someone talks, nod your head. If you do all of these 12 behaviors or 15 behaviors, people will begin to describe you as charismatic. And in the path of personal development, we want to become more of these things, but we haven't chunked down the bundled term into the series of behaviors that create the description that people will then call us later. And I think by breaking things down, then it's not like, oh, I'm just not that insert character trait. It's really, oh, I have not mastered these 12 skills. And so by doing that, it demystifies.
Much more precise.
Exactly. This is from a business perspective, also really good for training employees. So like, for example, on our team, I was like, Caleb was the first person who did video with me that I ever enjoyed. And so I was like, why? And then somebody else came in and I was like, I'm not having as much fun in these sessions. And I'd like to recreate the conditions of success. And so how can I make it so that I
operationalize fun?
Exactly. And
the most Alex Hormozi thing I've ever heard. Hey guys, let's operationalize fun for a moment.
And so we had to, but then this is the part that everyone misses, is that you then have to look with a microscope and say, what are all the little things that Caleb does that other people don't do? And so it turned out when he was behind the camera, he would be nodding his head. And if I said a banger line, he would stick his thumb out. And so I would get these many positive reinforcement loops while I was recording. And then as soon as I was done, he would come over and be like, dude, that was fire. And then he would take out his phone and have all of these really interesting follow-ups because I could see that he was actively listening and he had thoughts. And so then when we retrained the team, we said, hey, when Alex is talking, nod your head slowly so he sees that you're actively listening. If he says something cool, do one of these, give him a thumbs up. And then all of a sudden, my recording sessions without Caleb became as good as my recording sessions with Caleb. And we operationalized Calebism, right? And so I could say, I just need you to be more like Caleb, but that's not helpful to somebody. But if I said, I need you to do all these things, then I can operationalize that. The reason I'm hitting on this so hard is because this has been such a core change in how I see the world. And it has been so useful in terms of bending reality to what I would like it to be, because there's this huge disconnect between what people want, how they describe what they want, and what it takes for that to occur. If I just said, I need you to nod your head while you're going on camera, it's not that complicated to understand. And so when you break it down that way, all of a sudden you wrap your arms around it and you're like, oh, so this is what it takes in order for me to be an exceptional videographer. This is what it takes for me to be an exceptional podcaster. I'm sure, and we call it like, this is why I love living by checklists. But right now, if I were to say, hey, what makes a good podcast? You'd be like, probably about 128 things or more, right? But everyone on the outside says, you're so natural on camera. You ask such thought-provoking questions. Like, man, you just get the best guests, right? And you're like, sure. And so but the thing is I think this is the mysticism. This is the unknown that the beginners or the people who are at the very beginning of their path don't understand, is that there is no magic. There is no mysticism. There is no spirituality around this. Everything comes down to behavior. And by doing that, you can take out all of the hullabaloo, all of the voodoo that unfortunately is so prevalent on social media. And so when you hear the podcast clips and whatever of people saying you just need to be more this, if they haven't described it by a behavior, it is useless. And so this has allowed me to also separate signal from noise when I'm consuming content in general, or if I want to learn something, I'm immediately thinking, well, what does this mean that I have to do? And if someone can't break it down into the behaviors, then they don't know either. And they may be very good at the thing, but they may be very bad at teaching it. And being able to separate those two skills, because those are skills too, being able to transfer a skill is a skill, will allow you to audit who you're listening to so that you can get the highest return on your effort, because then you know that you're doing activities that lead to the outcome that you want.